And the evidence it's mounting. It's becoming harder and harder to dispute those claims.
It is, and he surrounded himself with so much good talent when he was first there, but he can't hold on to it.
Right.
Most of his coordinators are gone. A lot of his personnel, a lot of the players are out of there. He's recruited good players, but without the personnel to develop them, you can't do anything.
Yeah, so I don't know. When you look at it going forward, number one, it's going to be tough for Auburn to fire Chiswick during the season because he has a $7.5 million buyout.
Oh, they'll give him at least another year or two. Even if Auburn doesn't win another game, they give him another year.
I don't know. I think things could get really interesting if Auburn loses the next two games to Ole Miss and Vandy. If they lose both of them, things could get pretty rough. But, number one, it's going to be tough to fire him because of how much he's making. And number two, when you're looking at the available options that are out there to replace him, there's just not a lot to be excited about.
Paterno at Auburn.
Paterno or Petrino?
Paterno. Paterno would be an interesting storyline.
Well, you could dig up Paterno, put him on the Auburn sideline, dig up Bear Bryant, put him on the other sideline. There you go. Matchup of champions, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'd probably just offended a lot of people there, but
that's all right. I should have brought it up.
So I don't know. Big picture wise, the jury's still out. I like Chiswick as a person. I'm just not sure, where he's going to take this program long term.
I really think he's more of a hopper. He's going to be really good at a big program for a couple years, and he's just going to have to keep moving on.
Yeah. So we'll see. Quick preview for the Auburn game this weekend. Of course, Ole Miss favored by, I think, 6 or 7 now at this point. So it's kind of disheartening for Auburn fans to see that.
It's 4.5 on the office polls.
It's been sliding around. Like you mentioned, Ole Miss, they got a pretty good rushing attack. Ole Miss did a pretty good job of containing Texas A&M's high-flying passing attack last week against Johnny Manziel. So Ole Miss defense may be better than usual. Bo Wallace, Ole Miss quarterback, he's young, talented, but also subject to making mistakes, so maybe Auburn can get some pressure on him. But, to me, the key to this game is, you mentioned the run game. I'm going to say still that defensive line getting pressure on a young quarterback, forcing him to make some mistakes, and then on offense, just pick an offense, pick a style, and stick to it. Hopefully it's rushing, but just pick something. Try to make it work.
I think my key to the game is going to be stopping the run. If they can stop the run, Auburn's got a chance. And even though they did do well against Texas A&M last week, they still gave up 30 points. This is a defense that does have holes. If Auburn's going to succeed, this might be their best chance to do it because Vandy's got a pretty stout defense. Arkansas, say what you will about them, their defense has been absent for a while. It looked pretty good last week, but I don't think they can do it. Ole Miss has put up 215 yards rushing in their first game, and then after that, outside of the Alabama game, we're just going to throw that game out. They've had 150 yards or more in every game they've had. They had one game with 304 yards against UTEP. So that rushing attack is pretty potent. I just don't think Auburn has the horses to pull them down. They can probably keep them from making a lot of big plays, but Auburn's big key on defense is their lack of tackling. They still are not taking people to the ground, and Ole Miss will ding them up. What do you see out of this game?
I mean, as much as it pains me to say this, I don't think Auburn's going to win this game either. I think the offense will have a little bit more success, like you mentioned. They may try to, stick to that running game, get a couple touchdowns, but I see Ole Miss by at least 10 in this game.
I'm going to say 30-3. I think Auburn's offense struggles, and it just gets uglier from here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm personally not very excited about this game or the trip to Vanderbilt, which are two things I never have to say.
Never had to worry about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. Not a great time for Auburn football, but we're putting ourselves in great position for that number 1 draft pick.
There you go. So, I don't think that happens.
Yeah, we're going to try to petition for a rules change there. We've been spending a lot of time talking about Auburn just because, there's a lot to talk about there right now. It's difficult to talk about Alabama just because they're consistent. They've been very consistent. There's not a lot of questions, and let's just be honest, they haven't really played anybody.
They haven't. You wanted a lot more out of the Arkansas game, and it ended up being a letdown.
It's no fault of their own. I mean, when you look at, just taking a step back from a 50-year perspective, if you looked at Alabama's schedule and said, wow, they're opening up with Michigan, that should be a good one. They're going to play Arkansas, that would be a great game. It just, this year, those teams aren't that great. So.
And the Ole Miss game was competitive for a while. It was just boring.
Right. So, I don't know. I mean, I really don't think Alabama's going to get tested until the SEC championship.
And they might not. This game against Missouri right now is at a 21.5 point spread if you look at our pool. I think it gets closer than that. We were talking off air. Alabama's defense seems to always struggle at first with a up-tempo style offense. Missouri runs one of the most up-tempo offenses, maybe outside of Oregon. But they don't have much of a defense. They're missing their quarterback, which is going to hurt. But it's also going to bring a different style of offense to Missouri. They'll throw the ball a little bit more, but that loss to Vandy didn't look really good. But, I really do think Missouri gets up for this game, and I think they make it closer than 21.5. I still think Alabama wins.
Yeah, Missouri's quarterback, James Franklin, is going to be out for this game, I believe, with a concussion or something of that nature. So Corbin Bergstresser, or as I mentioned to David, Roger Dorn in Major League, will be quarterbacking for them this weekend. He was 9 for 30 pass attempts against Vandy. Ouch.
Little shaky.
Kendall Lawrence, Missouri's running back, could not break 100 yards against Vandy. Ouch. And just as a side note, Dorial Green Beckham, the guy who Missouri fans were hoping would be a savior, he's suspended for marijuana at this point. So he's not playing either. I think Alabama is going to make this one a rout, 45-7.
45-7. I'm going to say 40-21. I think Alabama's defense looks pretty suspect in this game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the key for Bama in this one, I would say, just make Bergstresser beat you, and you've got it won.
By the way, 40-21, that puts it at a 19-point game, just 2 points under that 21. I had to get under the 21.
That's okay. We should start putting some money on the over-unders, although we would never condone that type of behavior
ever
here on Outpunting Our Coverage. That's why we pick our games straight up. Let's go ahead and talk about some SEC games here real quick. We've run a little bit over on the Auburn talk, but I believe it was warranted. There's a lot of things to discuss these days.
They're pretty awful. So
pretty bad, yeah. Florida at Vandy. Any chance Vandy pulls the upset?
There is. I mean, you always have that letdown week after a huge game, or the potential for a letdown week. I think Florida has been extremely consistent. They might have struggled in the first half of some games. Their second half adjustments are really Florida's key strength. They just come out of the halftime and they look really good. They're starting to get a ground game going. Play action's really good for them. Vandy has a pretty good defense. They're definitely very physical, but they're not very fast. And Florida definitely has some speed. Every year they've got speed. So there's a chance, but I don't think it happens. I think I'm going to take Florida.
Yeah, I think the Florida offense versus Vandy defense is a good matchup to watch. But when you flip to the other side, Vandy's offense has no chance against the Florida defense that has really improved.
They have. We said at the beginning of the year they might have been a top 3 in SEC defense, and they're bringing it.
Yeah, so it's probably a low-scoring game, but what's the spread on this one?
I don't have the spread on this one.
I don't know. I would guess probably like 14 points, somewhere in there. I don't know. If it's around 14, I'd say it's pretty close. 2 touchdown wins. So we'll see what happens with that one. Kentucky at Arkansas. Should have been the game between the league's 2 worst teams, but thanks, Auburn, for screwing that one up for us. So now I guess a game between the worst team and the 3rd worst team.
Right. I think Arkansas runs away with this one. Kentucky lost all respect for me when they lost to Western Kentucky. They're probably worse than we thought they were at the beginning of the season. We thought they were pretty bad, so I think Arkansas takes another one. 2 in a row for Arkansas Razorbacks.
Kentucky only had 218 yards offense in their game last week.
That's pretty bad.
70 yards of production by the quarterback. So pretty much been the same story for them all season. Arkansas gets 2 in a row. John L. Smith gets to enjoy another fleeting victory. Good for them.
Maybe it'll make him forget about his crippling bankruptcy.
Yes, probably not. All right, let's move on to games in the Big Ten. The Auburn-Ole Miss game is in the Big Ten. The Bama game also in the Big Ten, just in case you want to have a chance of an upset there. Other SEC games in the Big Ten. Texas A&M at Louisiana Tech. This game was supposed to be played the first week of the season. got rained out because of whatever hurricane was happening at the time. Louisiana Tech has proved themselves to be a pretty formidable opponent this year.
I really like the fact that this got pushed back because it makes it so much more of an interesting game.
Absolutely.
At the beginning of the season, you would have just thought, okay, whatever, A&M quickly. But Louisiana Tech has looked very impressive at 5-0 and putting up some numbers on some people. I just think Texas A&M runs the same style offense, and if you got to say one thing about La Tech, it's that their defense is suspect. So, and I think A&M puts up a big number on them. Maybe it's close, within 10 points, but I think A&M pretty comfortably.
Yeah, Louisiana Tech, they're 5-0, but when you look at who they've played, their signature victories are against Virginia and Illinois. I mean, nothing really to write home about. Texas A&M is now an SEC team. Therefore, they are elevated to a little bit higher level than teams like Virginia and Illinois.
Illinois could be the worst team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing to get too excited about. Louisiana Tech, they put up some great offensive numbers against somewhat mediocre competition. I just think, Johnny Manziel had a down week against Ole Miss last week. He's not going to have two in a row.
No.
So he's going to put up some nice numbers. Texas A&M takes home the victory here. Let's move on to what I think could be a pretty intriguing game here in the SEC. Tennessee at Mississippi State. Mississippi State undefeated at this point,
right?
Having probably one of the best seasons in recent memory. Tennessee, the opposite side of the coin, just haven't really been able to get over the hump. But in my opinion, these two teams are not that far apart.
I don't know. I think Mississippi State's been more consistent. I think the reason they don't look that way is because they don't put up tons of points. And that's more due to their offensive style, where they just try to pound you for 2 or 3 yards at a time and then get you on a play action. But never for a long bomb. It always seems to be for the middle pass, 10 to 12 yards, and they just eat up little pieces of the field, but they dominate time of possession. So I think Mississippi State is definitely better than Tennessee at this point. Tennessee's the opposite side of the spectrum. They're just all flash. All they have on offense is the big play. They like going downfield, and they like going downfield often. I think Mississippi State's defense is too good for that. I think they win. And I think they kind of blow the doors off Tennessee a little bit.
Okay. Mississippi State, like you said, they have been better than in recent years. Tyler Russell has looked very solid at quarterback for them now that he's been handed over the reins completely. The only thing that worries me about Mississippi State was, they played Troy a little bit close. But it's easy to play down to the level of your competition sometimes in a game like that. Tennessee's coming off of a bye week, have some time to put some things together. And the one knock I had on Tennessee early in the season was their lack of a run game, but Rajon Neal has kind of stepped up into that role for them, put up some pretty decent numbers in the Georgia game, but that was kind of an offensive shootout, so you got to take those with a grain of salt. Initially, I was kind of feeling the upset here, but I'm going to try to learn my lesson this week and not make any stupid picks.
The year of the cowbell.
So, yeah, I'm going to go with Mississippi State here in this one as well. I think it'll be a decently close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have to get Garrett Burke on here sometime if they win.
Yeah, we'll have to. Let's say this: if they win this week, going into the Alabama game, we'll get Garrett back on here and see what he thinks Mississippi State has to do.
Some insider Bulldog
knock
action.
them off, yes, sir. So probably the premier game in the SEC this week: South Carolina at LSU. LSU kind of reeling at this point. After a loss to Florida, probably derailed those national championship hopes.
I think most definitely. That's going to be a hard one to explain because if you say that LSU keeps going, that means that Florida will probably have a shaky year. I just think it's going to be tough for them to get in now because they looked bad against Auburn and had a bad loss against Florida.
Yeah, so things not too great in Baton Rouge right now. Things really on the upswing, though, for South Carolina. Their defense looked absolutely dominant against a Georgia team with some pretty significant offensive weapons.
Right.
Jadeveon Clowney looks to be as advertised when he was the number one recruit in the country 2 years ago, I guess.
Did you see him hurdle the running back?
Yeah.
That was pretty impressive.
When a defensive lineman is doing that, you're in pretty good shape as a defense. So I was very impressed by what I saw out of South Carolina.
I am, and I was unimpressed with anything I've seen from LSU all season. I thought LSU would be undefeated coming into this game. Of course, they've lost their first game. played bad against Auburn. I picked South Carolina with the upset at the beginning of the year. I'm going to stay with that, but I don't